Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here, Siren of the Subconscious, back again, returned from my vigil at the bottom of the ocean where I have been consulting with the nymphs and the nereids, saying, please, reveal unto me all the wisdom that you possess pertaining to Venus in Pisces, conjunct Neptune, or in the 12th house. Reveal it all to me so that I might share it to those fortunate enough to stumble wet-footed upon this astrological YouTube channel. And they looked at me with their shimmering fish scales, and they blew some underwater raspberries, which I tried to intuit as being an affirmation of some kind. Now, I've had to do further parts of this because once we start talking about Piscean aspects or placements in the 12th or in Neptune, things become very complex and difficult to pin down. One of the mythological personifications of Pisces and its energies was the character of Proteus, whom we meet in the Odyssey, the old man of the sea. And as the personification of the sea, Proteus did not have a single form. He was a very hard god to liaise with or to control in any way, because as soon as you wrapped your arms around him or tried to fight him, he would just change from one form to another. He had no fixed form. Mutability was his very essence, just as it is with the ocean. You can look at the ocean for millions of years and never will the exact same pattern of waveform repeat twice. It is the perfect living symbol of infinite variation without cessation, of a constant rhythm that is only constant in its inconstancy, and so it is with the Piscean nature. And in terms of what Venus in Pisces wants, as the heart of infinity, it wants everything and it wants nothing. And we can see this represented in the various sigils we have representing Pisces. Commonly they're portrayed as the two fish chasing one another, a bit like Ouroboros, the snake, who chews his own tail. This symbol of never-ending recurrence of the cyclical nature of time and infinity. But perhaps more revelatory than that is the actual constellation of Pisces itself. It's a very difficult constellation to see because it is so faint and so murky. It's not distinct, it's not radiant and shining and bursting forth like the bright constellation of Leo. It is almost hardly there, this frail etching upon the surface of the sky. And you have the one fish, the northernmost fish that is just beneath the constellation of Andromeda. It is sailing upwards spiritedly towards the center of the sky, almost as though it wants to ascend to the pole star and take it in its Piscean mouth. This is perhaps a representation of Jupiter, because Pisces has two rulers, Jupiter and Neptune, that pull in somewhat different directions. So we could call this northernmost fish the fish that is reaching towards life. It's the fish that, while it has been swimming, sees the sun shining down on the surface of the ocean, creating all these beautiful, glimmering, scintillating patterns. And it says, there is something special up there. There is something beautiful and wondrous, and I must pursue it at whatever cost. I don't care if it's dangerous. I only care that it is beautiful, that it is the most wondrous thing I've ever seen, and I must find a way of commingling myself with that beauty, of becoming one with it. So this is the side of Pisces that chases, that surrenders, that totally throws itself into something that seems good and wonderful, that seems to offer some kind of possibility of salvation, that sees this and says, yes, take my whole being, it is yours. But the southerly fish is very far away. It's a big stretched out constellation, and you've got the one fish arching up here and the other turning away. It nestles below the very large constellation of Pegasus, and it is turning away. This is the fish who is, rather than wanting to reach the light, sees it dangerous. It's too illuminating. It's too bright. It is the light that burns. It is the light that destroys the possibility of mystery by condensing things into fixed form. This is the fish that is afraid of life. This is the fish that has become wizened and disillusioned. It has swam in the ocean for many years, and it has found that all that glitters is not gold. It has found that many things that seem to be beautiful, that seem to promise salvation, that seem to promise enrichment of the soul, are actually just tricks and spiritual hazards carefully disguised in beautiful forms. And after having tried so many of these things, this fish says, I'm done with it all. It is a nihilistic fish. I'm turning away. I don't want the light. I want oblivion. It's related to what Freud referred to as the urge of fanatis, the death wish within us all, the part of us that finds life exhausting and just desires some kind of ceaseless repose, some kind of eternal withdrawal, and yet not eternal, because within that desire we all have just for rest, for death, for that ultimate turning inwards. There is the desire for rejuvenation and for renewal, to try and find genuine hope and innocence and belief again, to find something worth living for, to rest enough that once again we feel that energy to return to that hopeful part of us that once reached for the sun shining above the ocean in the hopes of becoming one with it. And with those two fish nestled within Pisces, there are always those poles working against one another. Sometimes one fish has the upper hand, sometimes the other, but most of the time they are always constant and present in this tug of war. So the interplay of these two fishes, the fish of life and the fish of death, is reflective of how Venus in Pisces can go about initiating or trying to escape from relationships or just new possibilities in general. The life of a firmly northern fish is the one that meets someone and thinks this is the most beautiful, radiant, wonderful person I've ever met. They are definitely my twin flame, my divine other soul, the one who will save me, who will lift me up, who will make my life into a glittering paradise. And it's not necessarily that in feeling all these things it believes them, but it hopes them. It's willing to see the possibility of paradise and heaven and everything, but also enters things with that positivity and faith that if I see heavenly things in something, then the chances of me experiencing heaven are all the greater, because I have taken a risk. I have permitted myself to be vulnerable, to commit to something wholeheartedly. And if I do that, perhaps it will give me all those wondrous things back in return. It has this faith not only in the possibility of life to give every possible joy and the fulfillment of every possible joy, but also that almost messianic faith in itself to give that to someone else. This perhaps could be the part of Venus in Pisces that can see itself as a possible savior for someone. It sees the wounded, it sees the needy, it sees the sick, it sees those who are starving and deprived, and it says, I want to take you into my bosom. I want to be the personification of Avalokitesvara, or Kuan Yin, all of these great mother goddesses and gods who represented infinite compassion and mercy. It says, my heart is so full that it can contain everyone. It can deny nothing. All must come within and seek refuge within my love. And because it has that sense of being infinite, even though it is condensed in a finite form, it truly believes it can give that love to everyone. And through that love, be a force of healing, this holy grail that can see those who are wounded and disillusioned by life, who are occupying the place of that southern fish, and say, I will revive you. Through me, your soul will be resuscitated, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. And this attitude is expressive not merely of how Venus in Pisces approaches romance and relationships, but how it approaches anything. You know, it meets a new person and says, this person could potentially be my best friend, someone I will go on to create amazing memories with that will last forever after, and then they may never meet that person again. Or they will undertake a new project, a new piece of art, and say, this will be my masterpiece. This will be the thing that makes me famous, that determines my glory forever after, and then never finish it. I'm not saying they never finished anything. We can all do that, but it enters things into that spirit of absolute attainment, that whatever I go after will be like the 10 of Cups, and the 5 of Cups will always be averted. But it is this apparently infinite hopefulness, this refusal to believe that any kind of badness or mediocrity could ever result from anything, that eventually causes the northern fish to dovetail and give in to the inner force of the southern fish. Because there are only so many times that you can ceaselessly throw yourself into something, believing it will all turn out perfectly and finding that it never does before it begins to wear you down. The problem is that the heart of Venus so strongly identifies itself with all that is infinite and never ending that it can often be blind to its own mortal shortcomings. It believes that it can give and give and give and give, and that ocean will never run dry, that it can constantly draw from that well of inspiration and always be prolific. It doesn't have a sense that there is ever a boundary that will bring something to its close. And because of that, it can easily descend into very extreme patterns, sometimes of extreme patterns of indulgence or extreme patterns of denial. And I see both of these often in very Piscean people. You know, this overindulgence of just assuming that, yes, I can work endlessly and never sleep and somehow be okay. Yes, I can drink like a fish and it will never physically harm me. Yes, I can overeat and enjoy the pleasure from that and it will never affect my health. Or those who are so disidentified from the finiteness of their physical form that they just forget to maintain it completely. You know, playing video games for 24 hours a day and forgetting that they actually have to eat or wash or go to the toilet. Or which goes down a spiritual route and feels like it can meditate and pray endlessly and deny itself all physical pleasure and gratification because it has entirely surrendered itself to the infinity of the other world and then can burn itself out that way. That's definitely something I have done with the strong Neptune in my own chart. And when you have given all of yourself, when you've surrendered with such a pure heart, with this almost Christ-like consciousness and willing to give and believe and be compassionate, and it destroys you and collapses back on you, then that can cause a major reversion and crisis of identity. You know, if you've given 150% and found that you've come away with nothing, then nothing is all you feel like giving after that. You cease to believe, you become nihilistic, and your spirit just feels so worn out that it lacks the initiative drive to want to try anything, and it just wants to take solace and refuge in the darkness. And this fish, far from seeing itself as this messiah, this savior figure to other people, instead feels so lowly that what it wants more than anything is to believe that someone else will save it, that while it is trapped there at the depths of the ocean like the Inuit goddess Sedna, that someone will take her by her raven locks of hair and pull her up again and say, you may lack the energy to heal yourself now, but I will heal you instead. I will give you the compassion and love that you gave to so many people before you destroyed yourself through your excesses. And this ends up playing this ongoing drama of wounding and healing that occurs so often in relationships. Relationships have the compassion to heal us. If we are in that fallen state where we have ceased to believe in ourselves, where we are worn out, jaded, and disillusioned, if someone comes along and says, "No, you aren't terrible, your life isn't over, with me it can begin again. I love you, I see the best in you, I believe in you, and together as a couple, we can make anything work." And through having that belief given you externally, we can begin to feel it again. We can begin to think, actually, life is worth living. I do feel the energy. I do feel the power to swim again, to reach for those most northerly shores. But then likewise also, when we've given everything to a relationship and been heartbroken, that can cause a total crisis of identity. If we have built up all our identity around loving other people, once that love is taken away, we are adrift and becalmed, and there can be an almost total loss of identity. We are nothing anymore if we lack the crater and container of someone else's love to contain us. One thing I will say about Venus in Pisces or Venus in Neptune contacts or in the 12th is that while, like I said in my last video, I often can be attracted to impossible loves because then the fantasy is contained forever and can't be destroyed by actually being reified. Venus in Pisces also excels in situations where love isn't given strict barriers, where it is allowed to assume a mutability of forms and not just adhere to the status quo notion of how love and relationship should be. So non-monogamy and polyamory is often very good, I feel, for Venus in Pisces, because then it can indulge that part of its heart that feels like it can love everyone, that it doesn't have a fixed type, but can find beauty in many other people and in many different kinds of relationships. Within that framework, it potentially has the freedom to pursue those things and to be loved by so many people as well, and therefore to be reinforced and to have relationships in which it can fully express all the complex, diverging, and contradictory parts of its identity. Anyway, I'm going to finish there now. Again, if you have any of your own romantic stories or experiences or Piscean moments or Neptunian transit experiences that you want to share with me, please do share them in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe, and there will be more content on this never-ending subject anon.